not to follow Colorado's suit, and the possibility of the United States Supreme Court weighing in. We get this from 1421. Matt, isn't it possible the Supreme Court will hot potato this back to the states? Please share your opinion on this. Well, I guess anything's possible with the United States Supreme Court. I don't see how they could possibly do it because the question is one of the Constitution of the United States and interpreting the language, the clear language of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And because the different states are now determining different things about said language, and they obviously have their own rules, Michigan and Colorado have two different interpretations and have come to two different conclusions. It is incumbent that the United States Supreme Court repair those two different conclusions. And so I would be flabbergasted. Flabbergasted if they did not take this up with expediency and make a determination post-haste. All right, Dean, I promised you I'd get back to you, and I will. But we're going to have to wait for just a moment because, let me tell you, Mac Morey waits for no man, least of all me, least of all the fill-in guy. It is time, ladies and gents, to put our political discussions aside for just a moment and turn our attention to Mac Morey's Wide, Wide World of Sports. It really helps imagining Mac coming down the...
Yeah, strutting down.
Sliding down there.
Like Goofy?
Yes,
Skis
you are.
Just go flying.
Yeah, you're goofy. There's no question.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, Mac Morey, it's your turn. It's time for the Wide, Wide World of Sports. What do you got, Mac?
Oh, yes. Happy Thursday or happy Friday for everyone but Matt Murphy. That's a lot. Just kidding. Not really.
No,
all right, let's.
no,
Okay, let's. Since I will not be here tomorrow again, just mentioning that Titans. We're going to talk Titans today rather than tomorrow because they got a matchup against their AFC South rival for the second time in 3 weeks. And just last week, it was a 3-point loss in overtime. This week, they will take on the Houston Texans again, this time at Houston. So another chance to take down the rival.
What are the schedulers thinking? I don't understand that.
I know.
Why would they think it's a good idea to play the same team in a 3-week span? I don't understand that.
And it feels like they do this every year to a couple of different teams, Tennessee being one of them. And I don't know why. I don't.
It seems like that last year maybe it was like they played Jacksonville.
I think it was Jacksonville. Yep.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the season. Again, the same thing. This sandwich BS.
Oh, like we talked about earlier in the week, Mac, obviously you expect that the team's going to be there, they're going to compete, but I don't know that the fan base would be necessarily disappointed. Show me some good things, show me some of the future of the franchise that we can expect for next year, but other than that, I mean, I'm fine with an L. I mean, I hate to be that way, but it's the nature of what we're dealing with.
As long as you're not just going out there and laying down. You know,
of course not.
No one wants to see that.
No, it's the difference between fighting the good fight and accepting the loss, accepting that this is not your season, versus intentionally trying to get the loss. I think that's a step too far for most fans.
Now, on that same vein, in this conversation, starting certain players, one of those being the quarterback, Will Levis. He was a full participant in practice today, coming off that ankle injury missed last week. Tannehill started in his absence, and now he says, I just want to play ball. I want to go out there and win games and leave this season with a good taste in my mouth. Mike Vrabel echoed some of those statements, saying that he hopes that he's able to go Sunday in Houston. So, I mean, where would you guys say, hey, let's just sit? Why even risk an injury? Let's sit him for the last 2 weeks. I've seen enough. I've seen the flashes. Or you go, no, reps. Let's get this young kid out there. Let's try and go get some good plays and see what more he can do.
What do you think, Weber?
If the severity of his injury really wasn't that bad, if the trainers and the docs that all say, he's good to go and he feels healthy, I don't have a problem with him playing. I think that he's a competitor. He at least seems to be, and he wants to get out there play. I definitely like that from him. I don't know that I would stick him in there for the entire game. Maybe, play him first half, maybe. I don't know.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It really depends on the severity of the injury. Are you still injured? Are you trying to play through pain? Are you trying to play through the injury? If so, we sit you down.
Yep.
But if you're good to go, legit, and the doctors say, yes, you're good to go, then you accept the fact that football is a contact sport and you're always putting yourself at risk, whether or not the season has playoff implications or not. I say you get out there and you get those reps in. What do you think, Maury?
Yeah, I can see it either way. I even if he was fully healthy, I wouldn't be upset at Vrabel saying, "Yeah, I know, good job this year, bud. Can't wait for you next year. Keep getting those reps, but you're gonna have to watch Ryan Tannehill these next 2 weeks because that's how much we value." Or I can see the other side. I can see both sides here. Personally, if I'm Vrabel, I'm probably sitting him.
What is the value, Mac, in your opinion, of Will Levis getting reps behind this offensive line? This particular offensive line.
That's exactly it. I mean, how much are you really learning when you get to
when you're running for your life?
You don't even have time to make a read. You're not even, going through your progression. You don't even get a full hitch. Like, you're not even getting a full drop back hitch. All right, 1, 2. Like, he's not getting to do that more often than not. And that's really what we'd want to see with him because he is a pocket quarterback for the most part, and he loves to sling it. And I can't wait to see him do that, but let's wait till 2024. That would probably be where I'd lean, and I know that's maybe a sissy take, but I value Levis. I think we've seen enough, and like you said, Murphy, let's just go out there and ensure maybe a close loss, and I think Tannehill's better for that close loss.
Hold on, I'm sorry, I got distracted. I'm writing something down. Idea for the Murphy Show. Mac Maury's sissy takes. I'm gonna check with Brian to make sure he's good with this. I don't want to kind of steal from the idea, but if Brian has Mac Maury's wide world of sports, I want Matt Murphy to have Mac Maury's sissy takes on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
If you just to put this out there, if you do decide to go for it, I will lend you the sound effect for this.
Okay.
Oh, hang on.
Ready?
Oh my.
Well, look, here's what I would say. If he is healthy, and I know that nobody's going to be, quote unquote, 100% at this point in the season.
No.
But if he's healthy, if the doctors say, you know what, it's not, what's the old saying? Play hurt, not injured.
Yep.
Right? It's okay to play hurt, don't play injured. If he wants to play hurt, not play injured, that's fine.
I'm okay with that.
But if I'm Mike Vrabel, I'm sitting him down and I'm like, dude, no more of these helicopter spins in the air while you're trying to get the first down.
Slide.
You are more important to us in 2024 than you are the last 2 games of this season. Let's slide. Let's protect ourselves if we're going to be on the field. Try to learn a few things, get some reps in, and get on to 2024 in the
Play
offseason.
smart.
Yeah, play smart. That's right.
And real quick before we get out of here, looking at the draft order right now, if the draft was tomorrow, Tennessee would be the 7th overall pick. That can change to pick 5, maybe pick 4, depending on.
Did you see the online thing where Fox Sports misidentified Tennessee?
No.
Oh, they did some sort of online, like it was like, hey, draft order as of today. And they had the different slides. And they had, Chicago was in. I mean, the various teams. Arizona was like number 3, and it said Arizona and had their logo. And then at number 7, it had Tennessee's logo, and it said ARI. It's like,
dude,
come on.
What are you doing?
What? This is you got one job. One job.
You didn't proofread?
Give me a break. But that logo looks pretty good on Arizona, I will say. All right, there you go. There's Mac Maury's wide world of sports. He takes the sports hat off. He puts the news hat on at 5:32. It's news time on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.532, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 40 degrees in Nashville. Full weather forecast. Latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. Some breaking news here in Tennessee. Channel 4 says that a body was found, a dead man, and it was found inside of an SUV that was towed to a record lot and they're investigating it as a homicide. The medical examiner determined that the man was shot multiple times. The SUV was towed from Tusculum Road on December 15th, and the 58-year-old man who owned it hadn't been seen in several weeks. No identity has been released yet. Right now in Tennessee, News 2 says that more than $1.1 million has been approved by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for victims of the December 9th tornado outbreak. A FEMA spokesperson says anyone in Davidson, Dixon, Montgomery, or Sumner counties is eligible to apply for aid. And Gypsy Rose Blankard was freed early from a Missouri prison this morning. The 32-year-old, whose story was turned into a miniseries on Hulu, was arrested along with her boyfriend in 2015 for the murder of her mother. Gypsy took a plea deal claiming her mother abused her and kept her sick for years. Rob Hughes with KMBC TV in Kansas City explains.
The community believed that Gypsy Rose was disabled and terminally ill. However, during her trial, Gypsy testified that it had all been an act and that her mother had forced her to pretend she was sick and even undergo unnecessary medical procedures, all as part of a fraud scheme. Investigators say Dee Dee Blanchard likely suffered from a mental illness called Munchausen by proxy syndrome. That caused her to fake Gypsy's illness to get attention.
And that is the latest news, weather, and traffic. Next, I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is indeed The Drive. Matt Murphy and you until 7 o'clock tonight. Brian Wilton off until 2024. It's 5:37. Glad to be with you, and thank you for being with us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative of that. We'll jump back on the phones here in just a moment after I share this with you. And this, strictly for giggles, okay? I don't believe that we need to break down every one of these videos that you see online. Sometimes insanity is just that, insanity. But I do want to share with you 34 seconds of deliciousness from Libs of TikTok on social media. If you've not availed yourself of Libs of TikTok, they're great. This is 34 seconds of an explanation as to how the concept of man and woman is a byproduct of white colonization. Here we go.
White people ruined most of everything. Before Europeans colonized the globe, thousands of indigenous peoples acknowledged and celebrated multiple gender identities as part of their culture. Not only did Europeans spread religion, to get others to convert to their ideologies. But the idea of the gender man and woman was also a European ideology. That was one of the tools of the colonization process. And then men and women became the standardized gender identity as what we now know today.
Okay, first off, I don't understand why this person can't speak for more than 5 seconds without cutting the video. The little clips that you hear there, that's his video cutting, and he's splicing these little videos together. So he can't talk for more than 5 or 6 seconds or for more than one sentence without cutting these things together. I don't know why. Secondarily, this is interesting. So the concepts of man and woman, the concepts of gender and gender identity was invented by white people to subjugate all other people. Huh. Well, see, I must have had this whole Civil War thing wrong then. So my bad. I apologize. Libs of TikTok, and by extension, this insane human being identified on Libs of TikTok, they've explained it all for us. That this was a byproduct of the colonization of the world by European white people and the concepts of gender. So you're telling me Native Americans did not understand concepts of gender prior to white people coming over here? Okay. All right. Very good. When leftists show you crazy, let them go. Just let them go. When he, like Cousin Eddie tells you in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, word of warning, though, when he starts getting on you, best to just let him finish. Dean, we're going to try you one more time. I hope you're in a better cell, sir. How are you?
I'm well. Can you hear me now?
Oh, man, you sound fabulous, Dean. You sound good.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. I've got a voice for radio and a face for radio.
Well, me too, buddy. Me too.
So here's my scenario. Trump is nominated at the RNC convention. A week later, the DNC convention occurs. Sleepy Joe never wakes up from his sleep, and the shenanigans, as you so aptly put it, occur.
So, I mean, you're suggesting that they're going to do this at the convention as opposed to before.
Absolutely. That's where they control it. That's what they did with the superdelegates when Hillary got nominated.
Well, no, I don't disagree with this. I've been saying since last April that I don't believe that Joe Biden has the ability to fully campaign for president of the United States. I think he can skate in these primaries because he doesn't have significant competition. I do believe that Robert Kennedy will suck some of the life out of his numbers. I think he will suck numbers from him in a variety of different states as a third-party candidate. But that is on the general election ballot. So in the primary election, because there's no competition, Joe doesn't have to campaign. And that's by design. So with that in mind, maybe I've been thinking that they needed to get out in front of it. Do you think Democrats are willing to be led around the nose in that way, though, Dane? I mean, I don't know that they think for themselves necessarily.
Well, that's part of the answer. You're right.
Well, I like it. Dean, thank you for the call. I'm glad that you held on. I'm glad that you made it through the bad cell and got to the good cell and were able to talk with us about it. It bears noting that we would be gearing up, were it not for the dunderhead Democrats on the Metro Council, we'd be gearing up for some big times in Nashville, Tennessee this year. Remember that? I'd forgotten about that. Were it not for the jerks on the Nashville Metro Council suggesting that of all of the things, I mean, I remember this. I was relatively fresh into town, came in December of 2021. I just celebrated our 2-year anniversary on the airwaves from noon until 3. That was the time that Brian shifted to afternoons from mornings. Dan went to mornings. You know, we did the bounce around in the aftermath of the tragic death of the great Phil Valentine. And just after that, I guess it was spring following my arrival in December, the consideration was that it was between Nashville and Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. Remember that? How exciting would that be? The idea that the RNC was coming to Nashville. And we could have had it. It was ours. But the Nashville Metro Council, these lily-livered, mealy-mouthed leftists, could not stand the idea of conservatives coming into their town and spending their money. And so they just didn't do anything with it. All that the Metro Council had to do was offer up a one-sheeter to the RNC saying, we want you. That's what my understanding is. Milwaukee wins out because Milwaukee wanted it, not because they were going to get it. If Nashville had offered an expectation that, all they needed was to say, we want you to come into town. And they couldn't manage to do it. And their excuse was, well, we're concerned about the security. The fact of the matter is, if they knew that Donald Trump would not be the nominee, I think they would have done this. They could not manage to vote knowing that Donald Trump would be the 2024 nominee. And that was the expectation even at the time that they made the vote. Scott's in Nashville. Hey, Scott, how are you? Glad you called.
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call.
Well, sure.
I'll tell you what. I don't think the Democrats give one whatever that Biden is going to run. They don't care. If he runs, it's fine, and Kamala's fine because it's not their circus. They're just a couple of the monkeys doing what they're told. So him and Kamala, because Joe's got one foot on the banana peel. If he goes, Kamala steps in, and she's going to do what she's told. They're not running the show.
Here's the problem. There is a belief amongst the Democrats that Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump again, despite the obvious evidence that he, A, didn't beat him the first time around, and B, there were a lot of COVID shenanigans that lent itself to Joe Biden's victory, quote unquote. But there is a little bit of a belief that Joe Biden could do it again, that he's affable enough or whatever. I think that belief is waning as his ability to function kind of wanes. That said, I don't know of anybody that believes that Kamala Harris can beat Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is a more unlikable political figure than Hillary Clinton was.
Oh, absolutely, but she's still going to stay in as vice president if Joe, because he's got, like I said, he's got one foot on the banana peel. So once he gets in and he goes, she steps in and she just gets told what to do and what to say. And the people that are running the show behind the scenes, like George Soros, are telling them what to do.
Well, maybe I'm not hearing you properly. So you think that Joe sticks around until he secures a victory and then he goes bye-bye?
Well, yeah. He's probably not going to make it through the second term. He probably won't live through the second term. So Kamala would step in.
No, I get that. No. I mean, in under those circumstances, I understand what you're saying, Scott. I don't know that. I don't know that the American public. I fear being siloed in somewhat of an echo chamber, and so I make an effort to reach out, to try to understand how Democrats are thinking. It's a dangerous game. I like to say to you, don't watch #NeverCNN. I'll watch so you don't have to. It's an occupational hazard of mine. I wouldn't want to put you through it. I'll put myself through it. Both of us should not have to endure that. I try to do these things so that you can figure out how Democrats are thinking. I don't know of anyone that's enthusiastic about Joe Biden. More than anything, leftist networks presenting the news from a leftist point of view, they are avoiding conversation about Joe Biden. They don't want to talk about Joe Biden's disastrous border policy. They don't want to talk about Joe Biden's disastrous foreign policy. They don't want to talk about Joe Biden's disastrous economic policy or the failure of, quote-unquote, Bidenomics to take hold. They don't want to talk about his energy. I mean, I could go on and on about the disasters within the Biden administration. Tell me the accomplishments. I'm waiting. I mean, what has he accomplished outside of spending incredible amounts of fake government money and adding to the already dangerous inflationary rates? I mean, what are his accomplishments? The Inflation Reduction Act that did not reduce inflation? I mean, what else? I mean, I'm not being intentionally obtuse when I say to you that I cannot tell you if I were a Democrat, and this is a dangerous game to play because you get dumber even role-playing it. Try to imagine for a moment you're a liberal. What enthusiasm do you have for Joe? Sincerely. I understand being a fan of the machine. I understand bowing before the altar of government as if it is your religion. It is what Democrats do. But this is the head of your religion right now? This doddering old fool? What has his administration done that gets you really geared up? It is why anytime this subject comes up, and when I try to bring it up as delicately as I possibly can, if I'm around left of center folks, some of them my friends, believe it or not, I have a few liberal friends. I'm around these folks, and we bring these subject matters up. Anytime you talk about Joe Biden and his presidency and the future of this country under his leadership, they talk about Donald Trump. Every time. If I ask a question about what the future looks like with Joe Biden as president, I get some sort of answer that involves Donald Trump not being president. At least it's not him, they say, because they bought into the narrative that Trump is every ist under the sun. He's every phobe under the sun, despite the fact that he did nothing against marginalized communities during his presidency. As a matter of fact, I would argue that he benefited the black community far greater than any other president in modern history. Certainly the unemployment rates were as low as they've been in the last 50 years amongst African Americans, amongst all of us. Secondarily, he didn't do all of these dastardly deeds that were predicted by political leftists with regard to the gay and lesbian community or this thing or that thing. I believe that 2024 will be a series of liberals avoiding the subject of Joe Biden and attempting to make the conversation about what an awful human being Donald Trump is and about abortion. My prediction has been for the last 6 months that because of the midterm elections in 2022 and because of a lack of movement, significant movement on the Senate side or on the House side, now we did regain the House of Representatives, but not by the margins that we thought we would. I think that the political left believes that they have a winning strategy going after middle-of-the-road, middle-class women, suburban women, convincing them that the Republican Party are coming after your bodies. Now, we know that that's not true. But we're dealing with folks that don't pay attention to the news along the lines that you do, along the lines that I do. Once again, you're the smartest listening audience on planet Earth, right? You see through the shenanigans. But I do believe that it will be front and center on the part of the Democrat Party platform to suggest that the Republicans want to bring you back to Handmaid's Tale. They want to control your body, your quote-unquote reproductive rights. They think they have a winning strategy there. The Republicans, I would suggest, better have a very easy-to-understand answer for this. I have some ideas and suggestions. Won't get into them now, but I think they'll run anti-Trump campaign and an anti-Supreme Court bring us back Roe v. Wade campaign. And they think that they can get enough women either enthusiastic about that or they can tamper the enthusiasm that women might have for the Republicans at large and Trump in particular moving into 2024 because of fear-mongering. And trust me, the fear-mongering will be fierce. It's already in existence with the United States Senate election between Marsha Blackburn and Gloria Johnson. That's all Gloria Johnson wants to yammer about. It's 5:52, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Drive continues next.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners. and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up, because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence that is why the stock market has recovered from every downturn throughout all of history. Now, if you want to learn more about our approach to investing in financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
Violence continuing in Gaza. A decency ordinance repealed in Murfreesboro. Theft in Tennessee. A very expensive guitar stolen. We'll tell you where and if that theft has been caught. 6 o'clock, Super Talk, 99.7 WTN.
What is the most famous guitar in the world?
Gibson.
I would say Trigger.
I think Trigger, too.
Yeah, Willie Nelson's.
You know what Trigger is?
No.
McMorrin? Willie Nelson's guitar?
Looking it up.
Have you ever heard the backstory? How that all happened?
I have, yeah. I actually read it just the other day, oddly enough.
Did you see it on, there was something on social media about it,
Yeah.
what the worth of Trigger would be if it ever came up for auction or whatever?
Yeah.
I think I saw the same thing. It was in the late 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
Willie was at a concert, and some fan or someone accidentally stomped on his guitar, and it was deemed to be irreparable.
Mm-hmm.
And so his buddies sent the guitar back to somewhere in Nashville, some guitar shop in Nashville.
Yep.
And the individual that owned the guitar shop, and I don't remember the name of it, eventually said, yeah, you're right, this is not repairable, but I've got this, what is it?
It's a Martin.
Martin.
Yeah.
And I've got this Martin, and I think it's, worth your time and money. And charged him $750 for it, which is pretty expensive back in 1968.
It was, yeah.
That's a big time guitar, and he's had it ever since. And I mean, Willie has played that thing, and he named it Trigger because it was his sidekick. It's how he earned his living. And he said that was it Roy Rogers?
Yep.
His horse was named Trigger, and his guitar is kind of like his horse, his sidekick, so he named it Trigger, has played it so much. Wow. Did it never have a guard on it?
Apparently it didn't.
Which is why
it's got a hole in it.
It's got a hole in it now, where he has strummed a hole through it. But did you remember the price that they said it would be worth?
I don't recall.
$1.5 million. Ooh. The expectation is that if it was ever decided to sell it, I don't expect that will ever happen.
I hope not.
I would expect that when the time comes, and hopefully it's many, many years down the road, but gosh, Willie is 90, and we all got it coming, kid, as they said in the fabulous feature film Unforgiven. I think when the time comes, Trigger will be in the Smithsonian Institute.
It'll be in some museum, for sure.
Yeah, there's no. Yeah. I mean, if not the Country Music Hall of Fame, which, I mean, that's the rightful place for it. But I think that the impact of that guitar and Willie Nelson on the American dynamic is even beyond just country music. Mm-hmm. I think he's risen beyond that, much like Dolly Parton has. So there you go. So Trigger, $1.5 million. That's an expensive guitar. I don't know what you're talking about in the news over there, Maury, but that's an expensive guitar, pal. When we return, I will give you an example of how the mainstream media believes that if it bleeds, it leads, and they are misleading the American public. I've spoken on this subject earlier in the week, but now it's time to put a stop to it. A Tesla robot did not attack anyone. Stop it. Yet still the headlines continue. I'll tell you more on that story coming up in just a couple of minutes, and how James Bond is going to get arrested for something he did in Yellowstone Park. That's coming up as well. It's The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 6 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 39 degrees in Nashville. Chance for rain and snow starting tonight. That'll sustain into tomorrow evening. Latest forecast and a traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. The Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah firing off several rounds of rockets and attack drones on northern Israel today. It's a daily part of what is now called the undeclared war between Israel and Hezbollah. It's what threatens to escalate into a full-blown second front in the war raging there in Gaza. Meanwhile, there in Gaza, at least 50 Palestinians killed in airstrikes in the center and south. 1.8 million Gazans, or 80% of the enclave, displaced by the war. Some on the move again now. Jordana Miller reports.
Tens of thousands of Palestinians fleeing central Gaza as the Israeli army expands its war against Hamas. Gazans heading south, but the safety they seek remains elusive. They're finding shelters with no room, little food and water, and the sound of explosions from IDF airstrikes still all around them. No true safe zones exist in this war that has already claimed the lives of over 13,000 women and children.
And over 80,000 Israelis have evacuated their homes in the north. It's unclear when they will return. Right now in the volunteer state, Murfreesboro City Council members unanimously voted to repeal the city's decency ordinance last week after previously amending the LGBTQ plus wording. The original ordinance stated that it would ban, quote, indecent exposure, public indecency, lewd behavior, nudity, or sexual conduct, noting that sexual conduct included homosexuality. The ACLU amended the ordinance back in June, and the city of Murfreesboro will require a second reading vote the next time council meets. Theft in Tennessee. A man stole an expensive guitar at a Nashville music store. Channel 4's Brendan Tierney fills us in.
A man came here to Nashville Used Music saying he wanted to have his guitar repaired, but instead walked out with a high-end guitar he stole off the shelf. In this security video, you can see what the manager calls a switcheroo. The thief replaced a limited edition Gresh guitar with a very broken guitar he brought in his bag. They think the man cased the store out because he came in just after the repair tech went on lunch.
And the store is offering a cash reward for anyone with information. And December is now on track to have the highest number of Border Patrol apprehensions ever, according to Customs and Border Protection data. The agency reporting on an average of nearly 10,000 apprehensions a day over the last week. Mexican officials yesterday announced the creation of a new task force to address the migrant surge at the U.S.-Mexico border. It's a move that comes after U.S. officials pressed the nation to do more to stem this crisis. That is the latest news. Weather and traffic up next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy. Just being informed that I'm not invited to yet another event that I would like to be a part of. I'll take your money. Mac Morey just letting me know that he's playing some Texas Hold'em with family, apparently. Right?
That's the worst people to play.
Well, yeah. I mean, unless your family has a lot of money and they're gullible, you know.
And bad poker players.
And bad poker players. Anyway, it is 6:06. It is The Drive. No Brian Wilson today. That's the voice of Chris Webber. He's controlling the experience, making sure that everything that comes out of our speakers sounds as good as humanly possible. We certainly appreciate him. I appreciate you. Thank you for indulging me during these times together between 3 and 7 o'clock. Normally, you hear me from noon until 3, and I certainly hope you are listening. And if you're not able to, thank you for whatever time you're able to give us today and for the rest of the week. I'll be here tomorrow as well from 3 until 7, all by myself playing the Eric Carmen role. All right, I've got a number of ways to go on this. One, Maine has just, I think this just happened. I need to confirm this. Breaking news out of the state of Maine. Donald Trump has now been removed from the Maine primary ballot by the Secretary of State. Well, we knew this would occur, right? By the way, 615-737-9986. If you have any thought or comment during the final hour of the show tonight, this Thursday edition, please be involved by giving us a call. I'd love to hear from you. Secondarily, you can also super text us at the same number, 615-737-9986. I also invite you to be a part of my social media platform. Go over to @MattMurphyShow on Twitter, or as I call it, the X Machine, @MattMurphyShow on X, and follow us, and we'll keep you up to date with everything going on in the world. Maine's top election officials I'm literally 4 minutes ago. I was a little bit flabbergasted when I looked up on monitor number 2 and saw this. I thought I was reading it wrong, but I was not. Just moments ago, breaking news, Maine has become the second state to disqualify Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot. This is unconstitutional. I believe it will be ruled as such. However, it's big news. Maine's top election official has removed former President Donald Trump from the state's 2024 ballot in a decision based on what they say is the insurrectionist ban in the 14th Amendment. That's all we know. I don't have any further comment from the Secretary of State of Maine except what I just told you. So the second state, as expected, there would be several states that would rush attempting to get in front of the parade, especially in more liberal states. I never considered Maine to be more liberal, but I guess maybe it is. But especially in more liberal states, they're going to rush to attempt to get in front of that parade, as Colorado has done. Michigan was denied the opportunity through the Michigan Supreme Court. I think California got denied that opportunity as well. But Maine now becomes the second state to do this. Now, this doesn't change any of the dynamics. Eventually, the United States Supreme Court will rule. But what I have told you all along still remains. The expected narrative will be as follows. Maine has done this. Maybe another state gets it done before the time comes. We'll get into the new year. Over the next week or so, the United States Supreme Court will offer an expedited opinion on this. Every legal expert that I have heard from, that I trust and believe in, has said the same thing, that there is 0.00 chance that the United States Supreme Court goes along with these ridiculous leftist judges who say that it is permissible for them and them alone, without a court making a determination, without any sort of charges against Donald Trump with regard to insurrection or rebellion, and without a determination by a jury in good standing with these United States of America, a jury of his peers, a court has determined on their own that they know best what is insurrection and what is not insurrection. And so without a trial, without a defense, without even any charges involved, the Colorado Supreme Court has made this determination. One would presume, although I've not seen details as of yet, one would presume that that Maine went along the same lines of thinking, that the 14th Amendment Section 3 precludes Donald Trump from engaging in any future political elections or to serve. And that's the thing. I want to pull this up again because I don't want to get the language wrong. 14th Amendment Section 3 of the Constitution of the United States of America says this, that no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against said same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. You notice what it doesn't say about this? It says that no person shall be a representative or senator, okay? No person shall be an elector of president or vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the U.S. or any state, if they took an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or any member of the state legislature, or as an executive or judicial office of any state. It doesn't talk about the president of the United States. That's one thing that it does not do. That's one point on this. Number two, and more importantly to the point in Colorado and now in Maine, it doesn't say anything about running. Nothing. It says that you can't hold office. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president or vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States. Now, what our friends on the left would argue is that that provision would include the president, although they specifically, the founding fathers or those that wrote the 14th Amendment, not the founding fathers, but those that wrote 14th Amendment Section 3, they specifically did not mention the president. They said senator by name. They said representative by name. They said elector of president and vice president. They said member of Congress, officer of the United States, member of any state legislature, executive or judicial officer of any state. Why didn't they say president of the United States? You have to feel like that's intentional, right? That they intentionally did not mention the president of the United States. Now, once again, leftists will say, well, they say officer of the United States, so that includes the president. Well, that's all well and good, but one would think if they intentionally wanted, one would think that they would have brought the president up. They bring up every other position. They bring up senator. They bring up representative. They bring up judicial officer. They bring up members of the state legislature. They bring up executive or judicial officer of any state. The only place in government that they don't specifically mention is president of the United States. Huh. Well, isn't that interesting? Secondarily, and frankly, more importantly, because leftists will argue, well, of course they included the president of the United States. They say an officer of the United States, and that includes the president. Okay, fine. None of this has anything to do with running for president. If the Republican Party, if they are right, and I don't believe they are, if they're correct in their assessment that Donald Trump was engaged in insurrection, then Section 3 of the 14th precludes him from serving as president. It does not stop him from running for president. And I would argue that if they're right and the courts are going to agree with them, then if the Republicans are dumb enough to run some dude that can't serve, let him run the dude that can't serve. And if he wins, file it in court, argue the third section of the 14th Amendment, win, get him thrown out of office, and your guy gets to succeed him. Or I guess that technically at that point it'd be the vice president of the United States, but that notwithstanding. You don't get to preclude him from running. It doesn't say anything about him running. It says everything about being a senator, being a representative in Congress, being an elector of president or vice president, holding office, holding civil or military position under the United States. It doesn't say anything about running. Joe says, I think what's going on is that these people in these different states are listening to your radio show and you're ticking them off. So they're doing this intentionally so they can make the mainstream media news while something else is going on in the background to get you all riled up. Huh. So I think there's some seriousness to Joe's comment there. You think that this is a head fake? Maybe. We'll see. Scott writes in and says the SCOTUS is in a lose-lose situation. If they don't take the case and make a fast decision, it'll tick off. I'm going to say tick, not the word that you used there, potty mouth Scott. They'll tick off half the country. I say that knowing that I am the worst offender as a potty mouth on the radio station, and I apologize. It even says it right there in my Twitter bio. Been known to cuss right there in the bio, so you can't complain when I do. At least not on social media. Anyway, the SCOTUS is in a lose-lose situation. If they don't take the case and make a fast decision, it'll tick off half the country. If they rule this as unconstitutional, they'll tick off the other half. Just watch the fight against SCOTUS if and when they declare this unconstitutional. The calls to pack the court, even if by chance this is a 9-0 decision. I don't know that they're in a lose-lose at all. I mean, this is what the Supreme Court is there to do. This is a constitutional question. And much like in 2000, the leftist media will treat it as something that it's not. In 2000, the leftist media, and I was just getting into talk radio in 2000. I started my talk radio career as a wet behind the ears 26-year-old in Montgomery, Alabama, in January of 2000. And so it was really my first immersion into a constitutional crisis, what happened in November of 2000. When George W. Bush and Al Gore faced off, and I'm certain the state of Tennessee. By the way, can I tell you how much I love living in the state of Tennessee? The fact that if you guys had voted for your own, none of that would have happened. But no, you did not. You voted the right way. You said to your native son. And so he was stuck with trying to figure out votes in Florida. Remember that constitutional crisis that the Supreme Court weighed in on? And the media has misreported it ever since. You know what the Supreme Court decided that the Constitution says about what they were doing in Florida? The political left, I remember this. Once again, I'm elephantine. The left needed like 590 votes. They counted the votes. They recounted the votes. They recalibrated the votes. They did all the hanging chads. Remember all of that with the dude looking through with a magnifying glass? And they were still like 600 votes down. And they decided that they wanted to go back for a third bite at the apple and recount votes in primarily Democrat counties. They wanted to go to like Miami-Dade, and I might have a few of these wrong. They wanted to go to Democrat counties in the state of Florida. They didn't want to recount any more votes in Republican-based counties. Only blue counties. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. You either count them all or you count them none. One or the other, you pick. They wanted to count selected counties again so as to pick up as much for the Democrat, Al Gore, as they possibly could. Immediately in the aftermath of the decision, which was rightly decided, I might add, the mainstream media began telling you and me and anyone else that would listen that they tilted the scale for George W. Bush, which wasn't true. They'll do the same thing in this case. The Supreme Court, whether it's 9-0 or not, the Supreme Court will make this determination. It would help a lot if it's 9-0 because it takes a little steam out of the argument. But if it's 6-3, 7-2, the argument will be certainly the Trump Supreme Court voted in favor of Trump, suggesting that somehow it subverted the Constitution or the rule of law, which is not the case. 620 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. In the meantime, breaking news, if you're just joining us, Maine has joined Colorado as the two states now that have decided that Donald Trump doesn't get on the ballot. They've decided that they can't trust their voters in the various states to make a determination as to who they want their party's nominee to be. It's 620. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN and The Drive. Your calls coming up. Thank you, Mac Maury. I want to clarify something. I know and I'm aware that the Secretary of State in Colorado has stated that the plan is to continue to allow Donald Trump's name to appear on the ballot unless and until, let me get this right here, unless and until the United States Supreme Court affirms the lower court ruling or declines to take up the case. Secretary of State Jenna Griswold announced that she will allow Trump to remain on the ballot on the January 5th certification deadline unless the United States Supreme Court affirms the lower court ruling or declines to take up the case. So a lot of people are characterizing that as a turnaround in the state of Colorado. It's not a turnaround in as much as the Supreme Court decision stands by the Colorado Supreme Court. They have offered a stay of said decision until the United States Supreme Court weighs in, and consistent with that stay, the Secretary of State saying that Trump will remain on the ballot until the time that the Supreme Court weighs in. It's also an indication that Jenna Griswold, the Secretary of State of Colorado, understands how the Supreme Court's going to rule. What Maine did today is a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. It's a lot of bluster. They're jumping in front of a parade that's almost over. In the meantime, David's in Sumner County, joining us on the drive with Matt Murphy and for Brian Wilson. Hello, David.
Hey, boss, I'm sorry to change the subject on you, but I really want to talk about the 6 Americans held captive in Gaza. It was 8 Americans, but 2 of them have passed away in captivity. What are we doing about it? I'll tell you what we're doing about it. We're sunbathing down in the Caribbean. That's what we're doing about it. We're not doing squat. We're sending aid. We're making sure we're feeding the people. You know, the way this situation is playing out, I've come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as a Palestinian civilian. They're all combatants, and I think we ought to run them into the sea.
Well, there's
the Americans. I want our Americans out.
Well, Joe Biden's got sunbathing to do, like you mentioned. He's got vacay to take care of, man. I mean, those vacations aren't going to take care of themselves. No, it's an absolute tragedy, and it's a travesty that our president doesn't seem. I don't know that he's made comment about the Americans being held publicly. I don't know that I remember him saying anything about it.
Nothing. Squat. He's done nothing about it, absolutely nothing. And he's funding both sides of the war, and it's really stupid.
Well, David, well spoken. I'm glad that you changed the subject along those lines. I like to try to remind folks of where we are with regard to that situation in Israel and the Israeli-Hamas conflict. And it's obviously a sad situation that we do not have a stronger commander-in-chief that's more interested in getting our American citizens home again, but we do not. He's depending on the IDF and the Israelis, and he's playing both sides against the middle, as my grandpa used to say. David is next up. David, thanks for calling from Murfreesboro. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for asking.
I'm going to change the subject completely. The 99.7 family, and not to throw everybody's business out there. How's Pamela Furr doing? We never hear about that, and get back to the family of the radio station.
So Pamela's doing okay. For those who do not know, and I've not communicated with her for the last couple of days. Let me be specific. So let's see. Let me look up my phone. I want to tell you specifically what she told me the last time that we talked, which was yesterday, as a matter of fact. I asked her how she was doing. She said she was doing okay. She's still on pain medication, so she's getting better every day. For those who do not know, she had knee replacement surgery, has been homebound since then, but she's doing A-okay. She's got her sister in town that's acting as kind of her Uber driver. I've offered to do anything I can for her, but she seems to be doing all right, David.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm the firefighter that met you in Murfreesboro and wanted to meet her. Excuse me. Wanted to meet her, so I hope she's doing great, and keep the 99 radio station family in mind with all this other stuff that's going on.
Well, David, thank you for asking. I know that Pamela appreciates you asking as well. If she's not listening now, I will pass those kind words on to her, and I certainly do appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful and happy new year. Stephen is in Paris, I assume Paris, Tennessee, and not Paris, France. Hello, Stephen.
Yes, sir. Paris, Tennessee, out here next to Land Between the Lakes. Hey, Matt, thanks
by
for
the way,
taking my call, brother.
Stephen, before you get to your subject, I got to tell you two things about Paris. One, I've never been, but it is on my bucket list to go. Not just because of the replica Eiffel Tower, which I understand is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a cool little park. But Land Between the Lakes is where you need to go.
All right, Land Between the Lakes. But hold on. I understand. You tell me what name comes to mind when I say this. It's my understanding that there is a pizzeria in Paris that serves a deep dish that is worth the drive. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir. It's called Ace's Pizza. Ace's Pizza, man. He's got actual Chicago dogs he's from South Side of Chicago, actually. So the place is awesome. There's also a restaurant down on the square. The guy that's from New York, and he also has a restaurant called The Family Table. It's a little out of town, but he's like one of the best Italian chefs that I've ever ate at. So yeah, you got to get out this way, man.
How far is it from Nashville to Paris?
It's about a couple hours.
Okay. So
it's about a couple hours. So you can either go 40 and you can hit the highway there, or you can go through Clarksville and you can come 79.
I dig it. I'll see you soon, Stephen.
Yeah.
Look for me at Aces. I'll be the guy in the hat.
Do it, man. Do it.
All right. With all of those pleasantries out of the way, here's what I have to tell you, Stephen. Hold on, because we've got news. Mac Morey waits for no man. He gets itchy this time of day because it's his final look at headlines. Steve and Stephen, you guys hang in there. We'll get back to you. It is The Drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. 634 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you until 7 tonight. In for Brian Wilson on The Drive. The more I think about it and the more I read about the decision, the breaking news decision on the part of the Secretary of State, the Democrat Secretary of State from Maine, to disallow Donald Trump on the Maine ballot, the more it becomes clear to me that Democrats are the ones that are engaged in insurrection. Tell me I'm wrong. They are denying the rightful opportunity for voters in good standing with their various states to go to their primary election sites and vote for a candidate of their choosing. They are ultimately denying the opportunity for Republicans, or anyone for that matter, in Maine, in Colorado, and potentially in other states that are expected to follow suit. They're denying the basic democratic process of going to the polls and voting for a representative of your choosing, who's been convicted of nothing, who's been formally accused of nothing. It was one thing for the Colorado Supreme Court. Let me get on my soapbox for just a moment. I'll get back to your calls. It was one thing for the Colorado Supreme Court to consider a question brought to the court. They can decide things as wrong as they want, but at least that followed the legal process. But what they did do was exterior to the question that was supposedly considered by the court. In other words, they went above and beyond and determined on their own, without any basis in fact, and without any court decision previous to the Supreme Court deciding it, because they're an appellate court after all. They're not a court of origination, that Donald Trump was guilty of insurrection, despite that not being a question before them. This goes one step further, what's happening in Maine. Shenna Bellows, a Democrat, the Maine Secretary of State, in a 34-page decision. You see, what is that? What do you mean a decision? Courts make decisions. Secretaries of state do not make decisions. They might have opinions. Attorneys general might have opinions. They don't make decisions. In a 34-page decision, once again, that implies that it's some sort of judge. She's not a judge. She's an elected official in the state of Maine. Anyway, in a 34-page decision, Bellows wrote that Trump's actions around January 6th compelled her to rule him ineligible. Quote, now think about this for a moment. This is an elected Democrat who doesn't wear a robe, is not a part of the judicial branch of government, is the top election official in Maine. There's been no judicial decision compelling her to do this. She did this on her own. And she writes, the weight of the evidence makes clear that Mr. Trump was aware of the tinder laid by his multi-month effort to delegitimize a Democratic election. And then he chose to light a match. She then added that he used a false narrative of election fraud to inflame his supporters and direct them at the Capitol to prevent certification of the 2020 election and the peaceful transfer of power. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that's how it goes. That if we have a legit constitutional question or a question of criminality, that we're supposed to go to Maine and find wherever the hell, whatever rock that Shenna Bellows is hiding under, and unearth her and ask her opinion on it, and she'll tell us what to do, and then we do it. I didn't know that's how it worked. My bad. They're just making this up as they go along. So, I mean, obviously, this is going nowhere. It is a sideshow of comedic proportions. In a statement after the Bellows decision, Trump's campaign said, quote, the Maine Secretary of State is a former ACLU attorney, a virulent leftist, and a hyper-partisan Biden-supporting Democrat who's decided to interfere in the presidential election on behalf of crooked Joe Biden. We are witnessing in real time the attempted theft of an election, and the disenfranchisement of the American voter. Amen and amen. All right, that said, Stephen has some thought on it. Stephen, we got the pleasantries in our way, and I had to go to a break. I'm glad that you were able to hold. The floor is yours, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks, man. You just word for word, man. You're describing it. It's I think it's a little bit deeper than that at its core. I think this has got like some Clinton, Nadler, Schiff, kind of deep state party inner workings, ideas and stuff. It seems like they've all been reaching out to each other. But I got something for you to lock and load, man. I got some special ammo for you. What's good for the goose is good for the gander on this. So what we're seeing is all of these corrupt, crooked Democratic Supreme Courts and the judicial system that's turned upside down. And if they can do it, then we can do it too. So, and in the long run, if it comes down to that, we could just take Biden off of all the ballots, right? And I mean, I think that could, that will truly show us where our country stands, where our state stands, if it has to come down to that. And real quick on the Nikki Haley, where they tried to, the Civil War comment that she made, and they tried to turn it into a race issue over slavery. Okay, a civil war is a civil war. There's been all kinds of civil wars in this world. It don't matter if it's what it was about. She was pretty much just bringing up the fact that it's going to incite a civil war, and I see that. Not the civil war of slavery, but a modern-day civil war of political reason. So just for her defense on that, because the guy that was in there that threw it back at her, he threw slavery in her face. So that just shows his incompetence at his job.
Well, that dude, the dude was a plant. And thank you, Stephen, for the call, and thank you for the advice. When I get up to Paris, I'll look you up, buddy. Can't wait. 9844 says, to Paris, Tennessee, to your pizzeria. It's a beautiful motorcycle ride. One day you're going to have to make it to Granville, Tennessee. I believe in March or May they're going to have the moonshine and cornbread. I'm in. Moonshine and cornbread? Is it sweet cornbread? I got to have. Should I admit that I'm not that much of a cornbread fan? I'm a big moonshine fan. I mean, that.
Have you ever had cornbread moonshine?
Well, no, but I'm willing to learn.
That was, it's like cornbread flavored moonshine.
Right.
It's one of those, the many moonshine places we have in the state. It was astounding. Like you shoot it, it's obviously very alcoholic, but it tastes just like you ate a bite of cornbread.
Now, I would be down for that.
It was like okay, cornbread, sure, whatever. And then you take it and it's like, wow, it's cornbread.
I did have over the holidays Eggo moonshine.
That'll get you in trouble. That's
Have you had some of that?
I've had some of that, yeah.
It's good. It's called sippin' cream.
Yeah, there's not much sipping going on.
Oh, no, it's so good. Put it in the coffee, and it completely negates any of the caffeine effects of the coffee, and it makes you want to go to bed. At least it did for me.
You get a little bit of hint. Did you taste a little like a bacony type?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a syrupy, bacony, eggo-y. They say it's like breakfast in a jar.
Yep.
And they're right.
Start your day the Eggo way.
I'll tell you the quick story. While we're talking moonshine, why not? So I was a part of a wild game cook-off judging panel for a number of years in Birmingham. It was out at the Talladega Superspeedway. And they would invite local, quote-unquote, celebrities. And when they would run out of celebrities, they would invite me.
Yeah.
So there were, TV people or whatever. Well, there were like 12 judges in the room, and we were separated into 3 judge segments. And one of my judges was a guy by the name of Charles Daniel, who was a local meteorologist at a local television station. And Grant Lynch, who was the president of Talladega, knew who he was dealing with. And so he would supply an ample amount of apple pie moonshine. And it tasted like you were drinking apple pie. It was so good.
Yeah.
And so I asked Charles, I said, hey, you want some of this? He goes, no, Matt. I'm later on tonight, I'll be anchoring the evening weather on ABC 3340. I couldn't possibly have any of the apple pie moonshine. I was like, okay, that's all well and good. So we're passing it around. Eventually, we cajoled him enough where he tried a sip. I'll just have just a little sip, just to taste. I'm not making this up. Flash forward about an hour later, There's the same guy that declared he had to be on TV that night. His shirt's unbuttoned, his tie's all off, and he's holding a jar, an almost empty jar. And he's yelling to anyone that will listen, "It tastes just like Christmas." I assure you, it was much CTV to watch the weather.
I would have loved to have seen
There's
it.
there's a little disturbance going on in the state of Alabama. It tastes like Christmas. I gotta go throw up. Steve is next in Murfreesboro. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Steve. What's your thought on this Maine ballot deal?
All right. So I've got some nuance here, okay? So I know people have struggled with nuance these days, but a couple of things. Number one, I consider myself an independent. I've never voted for a Democrat. I had always thought of myself as a Republican until very recently. I think morally the Colorado Supreme Court got the ruling wrong in the sense of I don't think government should have any involvement in the primaries whatsoever. If Democrats want to put John Kennedy on the primary ballot, and Republicans want to put Ronald Reagan on it, fine, let them do it. They're private organizations. But the problem is that we've got into all these taxpayer-funded primaries, which I'm totally opposed to. I don't want to be funding my tax dollars go to fund Democrat primaries that I have no interest in. So that's sort of what we get when we get government involved with primaries. Next thing is the Colorado, the originating court did hear all types of testimony about whether or not Trump engaged in insurrection or gave aid and comfort to those who did. So although he's never been charged like criminally charged, there was testimony given, and the originating court was satisfied, and the subsequent appellate courts agreed that he either, and I don't remember which it was, either he engaged in insurrection or gave aid and comfort to those.
Did they allow for a defense?
I don't know. And then the next thing is, as far as Maine goes, so I get aggravated about this Secretary of State stuff, and let me tell you why. What little that I've read about the way Maine does it, and I like this a lot. The Maine Secretary of State apparently has authority to look at somebody and say, oh, they don't meet the age requirement, or, oh, they're not American citizen, or whatever. And they get to make that initial call and say, nope, they're not on the ballot. And then you have to go back and challenge that. And I think all Secretary of States really basically possess that type of authority. So, for example, but again, I don't like it being used in primaries, right? Like primaries are private. Republicans are a private party. Democrats are a private party. Libertarians, private party. I don't want governments involved in that. But when it comes to the general election, I'm okay with the Secretary of State sort of make an initial call, and then you have the right to go and challenge that. So, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, if he tried to run for, I'm sure people would love to have him as president, but he doesn't meet the qualifications. I don't think you have to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to prove that he's not a U.S. citizen in order to keep him off the ballot.
Well, no, because let me address a couple of these things. So I'm not intimately familiar. So I'll defer to your knowledge about the Maine Secretary of State and their ability to preclude individuals from being on the ballot, because I don't have independent knowledge of that. So I'll agree with you there that if that's the case, I think the U.S. Supreme Court will determine that. Secondarily, I could not agree with you more regarding your assessment on primaries. Sadly, because you want these primaries to be conducted on the up and up, we have allowed our government installations to infuse themselves, and frankly, they have confused the general population so much that a lot of people think they have some sort of inherent right to vote in primaries, and you don't. As a matter of fact,
I would go a step further and say the parties have co-opted government to support.
To preclude third-party involvement.
Absolutely. Tennessee is a great example.
And so, yes, I mean, they make it very difficult for third parties to get involved in the process so as to get names on the ballot in these third party opportunities. So I agree with you there. I would just as soon there be nominating conventions and leave it at that. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that and just have a general election as opposed to primary elections. But sadly, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Thirdly, it is my understanding, and the reason I asked the question, that yes, there was evidence presented to the court that Donald Trump was, quote unquote, guilty of insurrection, but there was not a trial giving the Trump people an opportunity to present a defense for themselves. So it was almost like a grand jury in the sense that they presented prosecutable evidence, but they did not allow the defense. It's my understanding they did not allow the defense to offer a rebuttal or to offer their own witnesses. So for me, I mean, that doesn't amount to.
I know the Trump attorneys said, and this is stunning to me, and I don't know how it didn't get more coverage. I went back and read part of that, portions of that ruling, portions of some of the trial testimony stuff. And Trump attorneys said that he didn't take an oath of office swearing to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. They said the presidential oath, which they're correct, has slightly different wording than some of the other oaths of office. But the idea that they just openly said, oh, no, this doesn't apply, this particular amendment, because he did. I mean, go check that.
Yeah, I agree with you, broadly. I'll check out the specifics of what you're talking about. That would be interesting. I agree with you that I have found over the last couple of years that Trump's attorneys leave me wanting. And here's why. They get a little cute. And I think it's come back to burn them on several occasions that they get cute. So I think that's an example of them getting cute. Well, he doesn't take an oath of office like the rest of the nation's, elected representatives. Well, let's not be cute. I mean, they want an easy way to get it dismissed, and oftentimes in these more liberal courts, it does not work that way. Great call and very astute analysis, Steve. I appreciate you calling from Murfreesboro. Thank you for it. One more real quick one before we have to say goodbye. William's on the road. Hey, William, how are you?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for calling.
Good to talk to you. I used to listen to you when you were on in Birmingham.
Oh, man. An old timer. Love that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not calling you old, William. I'm just saying you've been around.
Hey, I'm your age, bud.
Well, then you're old.
But I was gonna say something about all this insurrection. You need to hijack Brian's sound effects box and get the little BS sound effects. And
there we go.
Exactly.
Right.
A prime example of a real insurrection is when CHOP and Chaz and all these other autonomous zones, when they burned the cities and took over and said, you can't come here unless you join us. That was a true insurrection. And Trump didn't do anything like that.
No, I mean, and once again, there's a reason why Donald Trump has not been charged with insurrection. Okay, it's as simple as that. William, thank you for the call. Thank you for the kind words. I'm sorry that I have to, but I do have to run at 6:52. We'll wrap it up on Super Talk 99.7 WTN next.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. Have you ever thought about why we invest in the stock market? Well, you often hear because we want to protect ourselves from inflation. Well, what is inflation? It's prices going up. Who's raising prices? Companies. What do you own when you own stocks? You own the companies raising prices, so it helps protect us from that. The other thing is this. Think about the most successful people you know. They're typically business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. Now, if we think about the stock market, a lot of people worry about, well, what if the stock market drops and it never comes back? Well, this is another thing that I like to explain to people. If the stock market goes down and it never comes back, what does that mean? That means that earnings went down and they never came back up again. So earnings went down. If earnings go down, what else goes down? Taxes go down. If taxes go away, what else goes away? The government goes away. If the government goes away, the FDIC goes away. So think about it. Everything is built on the stock market. That's why I don't ever worry about the stock market going down. Everybody has the same goal in mind when stocks go down. Get it to come back up, because we got to get earnings to come back up. Now, you have two things at your control to get earnings to come back up. One is sales. We can change what we're selling or sell more of whatever we have if we can. And if we can't do that, we can reduce our expenses. And that's exactly what companies do. You'll notice that they lay off people when things get bad, and hence...
Super Talk 99.7 WT in a few more moments before we'll call it a night. Say hello to Mark Levin, or a sub for Mark Levin, the great one on vacation this week. Our great one, Brian Wilson's on vacation until 2024. He'll be back Tuesday next. I'll be back in my normal position starting on Tuesday from noon until 3. We'll take Monday off for the New Year's Day holiday. From noon until 3, you're normally hearing me on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thanks to Joan Jones for filling in my slot as I fill in Brian's slot. She's doing a great job and is a fabulous new addition to Super Talk 99.7 WTN, if I do say so. All right, a couple of stories I promised to get to. First off, Mr. Weber, how many Californians, and if you've seen this story, admit it, because you're up on the news, from 2021 to 2022, in 1 year's time, what would be your guess as to the number of Californians who moved to Tennessee?
Ooh, I have not seen this, so I will say in 1 year's time, I'll say 2,000.
2,000. Multiply that times 10.
Really?
22,000 Californians.
Wow.
Have moved to Tennessee. That's Tennessee now.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, 220,000 people moved to Tennessee in that 1 year stretch. That's a lot.
It is, yeah.
I think I saw about a year ago where in a 1 year time frame, an average of 100 people a day were moving to Nashville.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
And that's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, if you dig a little deeper into why, you'll find that they are fleeing from, not bringing with, the politics of that region. Matter of fact, making the move from California to Tennessee is so popular that a site called exitcalifornia.org has an entire webpage dedicated to offering useful tips for those seeking to flee the West Coast. You don't need any moving permits, but check on local parking restrictions before moving to Tennessee, one tip says. The humid climate all year round, says another. Be sure to cover any moving boxes or other items you might have to leave outside for a few hours. If you're planning on using storage after moving to Tennessee, make sure the space is dry and free of mold.
It's not that humid here.
It's not like we're on the Gulf Coast or anything. The site, I guess we're more humid than California.
That's true, yeah.
I don't know. I've admitted I've never been to California. Have you ever been to California?
Oh, sure, yeah.
See, that's the reaction I always get. I almost feel kind of ashamed. I mean, I've been to a lot of states. I've been to Nevada. I've never been to Washington State. I've never been to Oregon, never been to California, never been to the left coast, the shaky side, they call it. I've been to Arizona. I've been to Nevada. I've been close, but not quite there. And no, I don't know that I have a desire to go.
There are some really nice places in California. And there's some really awful.
I feel like California would be a really nice place to visit if you have the money to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
It would be a sucky place to live in a middle-class way.
Agreed.
My feeling.
Agreed.
And I think we're agreed. Jerry Wernell agrees with us. He's a former police officer in Roseville, California. He explained that, and he gave this to the Tennessee Star website. He explained that he fled the state for political reasons. Moved with his wife to Maryville. I don't miss the politics. I don't miss the beach. I don't miss the homelessness. I don't miss the cost of living out there. Gas is $1.50 to $2 less expensive here. The utilities are less expensive by a long ways. The freedom to have your own belief matters. The freedom to live a life your own way as you see fit. It's very hands off. Good for you. And congratulations on the move, Jerry. I believe these folks are moving from something. They're not bringing that something with them when they come to the volunteer state. The site also notes Tennessee is one of the most affordable states to live in, saying the cost of living in the volunteer state is 18.94% lower than the U.S. average and ranks amongst the 10 most affordable states to live in the entire United States of America. All right, two other stories to get to before we go. Headline, Tesla robot goes haywire on engineer in Texas factory, trail of blood. Would you stop it? Would you please stop it? I'm sorry to laugh, but I laugh every time I read this line. The robot, quote, dug its claws into the engineer's back and arm.
Makes me think it's like a transformer,
It's not, this is not the Terminator. That they forgot to turn the robot off. They were trying to fix something. It was doing its job, and the dude got in the way. That was it. And finally, as promised, James Bond, a.k.a. Pierce Brosnan, is headed into court violating policies at Yellowstone National Park. He was cited for, quote, foot travel in thermal areas.
Sounds dangerous.
Better watch yourself.
But he is Bond.
Yeah. Bond, James Bond.
Yeah.
Brosnan, Pierce Brosnan. That's going to wrap it up for us. I'll be back tomorrow. Chris will not.
Nope.
But I'll be here from 3 until 7. Until then, enjoy the great one or whomever's filling in for the great one. So long, everybody.